Today we'll be discussing a range of issues about diabetes and related disorders, including other non-communicable disorders. And I think it's important for us to understand initially as to how many of you are familiar with a term called non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable disorders are those which really are not passed on between people, but they can have risk factors which could be for multiple disorders. So diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, strokes, kidney disorders, lung disorders like chronic obstructive airway disease, all of these fall in the realm of non-communicable disorders. Common risk factors for a group of conditions, and these group of conditions today are responsible for more than half of all deaths across the world. Even in countries like India, where we were worried about infectious diseases as being the dominant causes of mortality and morbidity, it is now NCDs which are responsible. Diabetes is a condition where either because there is a deficiency of insulin in the body or because the insulin cannot function as well as it should, the sugar in the blood starts to rise. Diabetes has got multiple types, but I think the two most important ones we need to understand: what is called type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. In the first instance, that is in type 1 diabetes, an absolute deficiency of insulin in the body, and for type 2 diabetes, there is initially an inability of that insulin to function well, or there's a resistance to the action. The insulin is produced in the pancreas. So pancreas, if for some reason the pancreas gets destroyed, or especially the cells which make insulin get destroyed, there will be a shortage of insulin inside the body. A third one, which could be considered as a variant of type 2 diabetes, is what is called gestational diabetes, in which women who are pregnant tend to develop diabetes because of the physiology of pregnancy, in which makes the tissues resistant to the action of insulin. Diabetes can be without symptoms altogether. The age group which is in schools is much more likely to suffer from type 1 diabetes than from type 2 diabetes. Three important symptoms: excessive urination, excessive thirst, and excessive hunger. But that really happens when the blood sugars are very, very high. More importantly, you can get a range of other scenarios in which people often come and say that, I've been getting repeated skin infections, recurrent urine infections. Now my wounds are taking long to heal. Young girls often tend to get vaginal infections. Similarly, boys and men can get fungal infections. Type 2 diabetes can be without symptoms, and therefore, in a group which is at risk for type 2 diabetes, especially in the older age group, but even in school-age children who have a strong family history of diabetes and who have a tendency to put on weight, it is important to do a periodic assessment of blood sugars so that you catch the diabetes early and introduce therapy early, rather than waiting for them to present to you with symptomatic disease. It is not likely to present with a state of extreme hyperglycemia, that's an elevated sugar and problems related to that. You can have very high uncontrolled sugars, and these uncontrolled sugars, you can have children who may feel excessive, the need to go and pass urine repeatedly, and this has to be recognized. Because of the high sugars and the utilization of fat for making energy in the body, they start feeling nauseous, they may have vomiting, they may then end up with an altered consciousness, they may actually lapse into coma. So the school's responsibility is to convey a sense of an enabling environment. The child and the parents' responsibility is to communicate their problem with the school, at least one peer and one teacher. Child may have taken a shot of insulin and in a hurry not taken adequate amount of food before they came to school, or they had a games period and they possibly exerted more than what they should have, and sugars can fall. This is called hypoglycemia. The child, before progressing to this extreme stage, may actually complain of anxiety, of palpitations, of tremors, of a sense of hunger, start feeling sweaty. Once again, if the child communicates these problems to a peer or the school teacher, immediate action must be taken. We don't have adequate knowledge about how to prevent type 1 diabetes, and therefore if a child is unfortunate enough to be plagued with this disease, it has to be managed accordingly. Type 2 diabetes definitely can be prevented. If not prevented, it can be delayed. They should take calories which should not allow them to put on weight, and if they have already become overweight or obese, they should take the amount of food which will help them lose weight. Secondly, the amount of refined carbohydrates which they eat, so maida, bread, anything which is easily digested and therefore contributes to a sharp rise in blood sugars, should be restricted. Increasing fiber in the diet, which is more gradual breakdown of food so that there's no surge in blood glucose in the body. So we need to encourage and provide facilities for children, and for that matter even adults, to have some form of regular physical exercise. It could be as simple as a brisk walk for kids, it could be cycling, it could be jumping on the spot, it could be anything in which calories are expended. So these are the two most important things which must be inculcated, which must be facilitated, and for which an environment has to be created so that it is enabling and makes it easy for the child to eat healthily and exercise regularly. The myth about type 1 diabetes, which is really worrisome, that we can do something about this disease without giving insulin injections. The only way we can efficiently deliver insulin to an individual is by giving them injections of insulin. Without insulin, a type 1 diabetes individual will die. The myths about type 2 diabetes are that it happens only in adults, that it only happens in fat people, it only happens in the rich, it's a milder disease because you don't need injections, it can be managed with tablets. Let me make this point very, very clearly. Once a diabetes chronic complication happens, i.e., if the retina gets damaged, or the kidney gets damaged, or the heart gets damaged, or the brain gets damaged, there is nothing that modern medicine today can do to reverse that. The child is spending 6, 7 or 8 hours with you in school, about 30% of their living day. Their parents have passed on the responsibility not only of their education, but of their child's existence to you. So why cannot healthy lifestyle be driven from the school? It is eminently doable if school children not only absorb that message, but escalate it by telling their family members. And for that, you will possibly be the beacon of hope for stimulating and inciting that movement, but start doing it yourself so that you provide true examples, not merely in thought, but also in action.